This body, according to the fishermen, has been shot, burned, and castrated.
The body we found today is a bit different than what we usually find. It's been burnt, it has gunshot wound on its left side, and it's been castrated.
But the residents of the banks of Setit River in Sudan will be the first to tell you that there's nothing particularly different about today. Over the past year, Sudanese fishermen and Tigrayan refugees here have found 140 bodies of Tigrayans detained, tortured, killed by Ethiopian and Eritrean forces in western Tigray, and their bodies dumped into the Tigray River. Gabratinsai Gabrakristos is a community leader for Tigrayans in the area and has been keeping a tally of the bodies.
Last year, we buried 126 men and 14 women. All had their hands tied behind their backs, limbs cut off, and they had signs of torture.
First cases of Tigrayan bodies floating across the Keza were reported exactly a year ago. Following the reports, CNN traveled to the area and discovered bodies of Tigrayan men on the banks of the river. All the bodies were mutilated, eyes gouged, castrated, with a missing limb, and all had their hands tied behind their back by electric wires.
We just got a call that 3 bodies were found down at the riverfront, so we're running down to see what we can see.
From the binds still biting into his skin, it's clear this man suffered a tortured death. This Tigrayan has been helping to recover the dead. He holds up the body, but the image is too gruesome to show you. His eyes, though, betray the horror in front of him.
Earlier this week, Globe and Mail had reported on 4 male survivors of sexual violence who were raped and tortured by Amhara militia for attempting to escape a detention camp where they were routinely tortured and denied food. Just one other indication of the hell that Western Tigray has become for the few Tigrayans that still remain.
In a statement on Thursday, Tigray External Affairs Office called on the International Commission of Human Rights experts on Ethiopia to condemn the more than year-long siege on Tigray, saying the Commission must call for an immediate lifting of the siege and emphasize that the Commission's work must not be limited to ensuring only retrospective accountability. The office said it feared that Commission's decision to create an online platform to collect data and evidence regarding atrocities in Ethiopia while Tigray remains under a communications blackout, indicated a lack of recognition of the level of destruction that has taken place in Tigray, and called on the Commission to recognize that the government and people of Tigray are indispensable interlocutors in their investigative journey. For more, Abel Zakavu.
In a statement on Thursday, Tigray External Affairs Office called on the International Commission of Human Rights experts on Ethiopia to condemn the more than a year-long siege on Tigray and said the Commission must call for an immediate lifting of the siege and said the Commission's work must not be limited to ensuring retrospective accountability. The office said that it feared that the Commission's decision to create an online platform to collect data and evidence with regard to atrocities in Ethiopia while Tigray remains under a communication blackout indicated a lack of recognition of the level of destruction that has taken place in Tigray. The statement said any attempt to set up a framework for investigation that treats Tigray as marginal stakeholder is not only unacceptable, but its results are sure to lack credibility. The office stated that it considered the Ethiopian government's continued obstruction of duly constituted international investigative body as an admission of guilt, and noted that the government of Tigray had not only expressed its acceptance of the legitimacy of the investigative body, but has promised its full cooperation. But said it's concerned that the Commission's integrity is in grave danger of being compromised, noting that treating the victimizer as indispensable interlocutor while maintaining veil of secrecy when it comes to the victim risks the impartiality and credibility of the Commission. The office stated since the Ethiopian government is implicated in atrocities committed in Tigray, the Commission must refrain from establishing any contacts that might hijack the Commission's work. It said the Commission should simply demand unrestricted access to various suspected sites of atrocities and be allowed to fulfill its mission without interference.
A joint statement by civil societies in Tigray called on the UN-designated International Commission of Human Rights experts to learn from the failures of the previous joint investigation conducted by Ethiopia's state-appointed Ethiopian Human Rights Commission and the Higher Commission for Human Rights that has been widely discredited due to failure in methodology and scope. For more, Abel Zakavu.
A joint statement by civil society in Tigray called on the UN-designated International Commission of Human Rights experts to learn from the failure of the previous joint investigation conducted by Ethiopia's state-appointed Ethiopian Human Rights Commission and the Higher Commissioner for the Human Rights, that the civil society said used wrong methodologies, misinformation, and distorted data that affected the analysis and conclusion of the investigation. The statement from the civil society emphasized that misinformation, distortion of history and demographic data in Western Tigray, failure to visit sites and population most affected by the atrocities, and the use of relocated persons in Western Tigray, mainly in Maykadra, as key informants, has resulted in an investigative report that was considered an incredible mistake that the civil society hoped wouldn't happen again. The statement added that the partial and biased nature of the state-appointed Ethiopian Human Rights Commission and its commissioner Daniel Bekele have hugely influenced the methodology process as well as the scope of investigation. It also said the reliance of internet and phone communication when Tigray was under communication blackout had affected the analysis and conclusion reached by the joint investigation. The societies said they hope the UN-designated International Commission would take lessons from the joint investigation and carry out impartial and credible investigation by visiting the all suspected area to the violation of international human rights law, humanitarian law, and international refugee law.
Tigray General Hospital used to be one of the most well-equipped in the state, treating tens of thousands each year. But today, the CEO for the General Hospital says it's become almost a daily occurrence to see patients dying due to lack of medication and other medical items. For more, Abraham Gabriel has a
Kahsa Gebrselassie is one of the hundreds of patients seeking medical treatment at Adigrat General Hospital. Kahsa was diagnosed with a heart condition almost 15 years ago and has been receiving treatment ever since. She has been coming to the General Hospital for years, she tells us, and used to be able to get her routine treatment and return home soon after. But this time around, Kahsa has been at the hospital for almost 2 weeks and has yet to receive treatment.
I
came here for my treatments every month. The room used to be so clean and very well equipped. But now we have to bring every non-medical items with us because they don't have it. We have to bring foods, blankets, and bed sheets. And there's not even enough medical supplies at the hospital or even in private pharmacies. Whatever is left, it's much too expensive for us.
Kahsa's situation is no exception. Many are coming to the General Hospital for medical treatment that is just not available.
The hospital had no medication. Everything had been finished. Even the private pharmacies didn't have medication either. My health is deteriorating. The doctors have been able to do nothing for me because there is no medication. They are just as weird as I am.
There used to be medicine before, but now there is nothing. And there is no food either. I have nothing too, so I'm getting weak.
Gabriel Michele, pharmaceutical coordinator at the hospital, says the pharmacy has very little supplies left and is especially struggling to cope with the needs of patients with chronic illnesses.
We don't have medication for patients with chronic illness. We have nothing for diabetics, hypertension, or liver problem. Whatever we received from aid agencies, they are finished within a day. We have almost stopped receiving ART medication. We don't have MDR-TV medicine for drug-resistant TB2.
The blockade on the region and the systematic destruction of health facilities that has left but a few standing has led to the near total collapse of Tigray's health system. Averash Fissaha is CEO at the General Hospital. She says watching patients dying due to lack of medical supplies has become an almost daily occurrence.
We don't have a lot of the medication that is needed to treat patients because of the siege. The hospital is open 24 hours a day, but we don't have medical supplies. People die or sustain a lifelong physical injury because we don't have the medication to treat them, and there is no food.
At the outset of the conflict, residents of a small village of Rahya in Adwa, central Tigray, would witness a horrific massacre. Ethiopian and Eritrean soldiers would go house to house, killing victims and later using machetes to cut up their bodies. Our reporter spoke to Abraham Gabriel, a resident of Rahya, who lost 4 family members. Sarah Kalali reports.
As atrocities of the 8-month-long occupation by invading forces continue to unravel, many horrific stories of rape, massacre, and torture of Tigrayans have come to light. This is the village of Rahya in the district of Adwa in central Tigray. In December of 2020, Ethiopian and Eritrean soldiers would go on a killing rampage in this small village, taking the lives of many innocent civilians. Lettebrhan Gebrselassie lost 2 children, 1 grandchild, and 1 relative that day. Over 19 months later, Lettebrhan says she remembers that day like it was just yesterday.
Of course I remember. What has happened to me is unforgettable. It was on December 25. I was the only one with them. They were asking them where the militias were, and they told them they didn't know. They didn't give them time to answer. They kept hitting them with the machetes. Then one of them said, "Kill them," and that was it.
On that day, Lettebrhan lost 2 of her children and her grandchild, as well as a close relative.
They were hitting them with the machetes at first. I was the only one there. The rest of our family members were inside. 2 of them were my children, the oldest and the youngest. The other one was my daughter's son. The 4th one was a relative.
Lettebrhan says she's haunted by images of her loved ones till this day.
I remember us all eating breakfast together that day. I remember their faces clearly. I remember what they had for their future. My youngest was supposed to graduate that August. I see his face so clearly. I remember how he used to be. And also their last moment, the way the soldiers were beating them. They were hitting them with machetes in front of my eyes. They kept saying, "Kill them." They were Amhara, but their leader was a Tigrinya-speaking woman. She carried a cane and she was limping. The others were speaking to her in Amharic, but she replied in Tigrinya.
Lettebrhan will go on to carry the pain of having to witness the loss of her loved ones. But even more difficult is knowing that her children are yet to be served justice.
And that's it news for now. Thanks for checking in. Till next time, bye for now.